Thank you for tuning in to Cop with Comic. I'm Brian Koppen. We're here with comic Elon Altman. Elon Altman, how the hell are you?
Hey, Brian. Doing good.
Dude,
How are
thank
you?
you so much. Oh, dude, I mean, I'm so good now because I get to talk to you about Seinfeld of all things, which is fucking great. I've yet to have a Seinfeld episode. You can't imagine my joy.
Well, I'm glad to talk about it. Love the show.
Yeah, maybe you can't imagine my joy. You know, like a fellow Seinfeld fan would get the joy of talking about Seinfeld. And so, real quick, where are you doing online stand-up comedy? It sounds like, I follow you here at Twitter. You're Alon, Alon, you so crazy. Alon, you so crazy just rolls off the tongue. And then Alonstagram is hilarious for Instagram. And you are the man behind What's That Cloud, which is the funniest fucking thing. If you see some clouds and it looks like something to you, you'll snap a picture of those clouds, which is the first thing in the slideshow. But then if you go to the next picture in the slideshow, you have drawn a picture of what that cloud looks like, and it is huge. Like, people on Instagram love clouds, and you tapped into that, I guess.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's been a real whirlwind.
It's been crazy. When I started it, I was doing like one a day. I was like, I got to keep up with this one a day. I'm going to run a cloud. And I did it for like 100 days straight. And then I stopped, and I thought, I'm much happier not doing it every day.
There are things other than clouds which are funny.
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone's obsessed with clouds. We all know that. But there's other parts to life.
Dude, I love it. I didn't know it till today, but what's tragic about this comedy is that it has more followers than you. You are the man who created this fucking thing.
Yeah, it's got 1,000 more followers. I have 48,000. It has 49,000.
Yeah, oh yeah. You both are pretty far along, but man, that's a tragedy to see that. But the fact that you're able to kind of bring comedy, you really have to, cloud lovers need comedy too, and you're the guy who's kind of dishing it out for them.
Yeah, and I think it's important on Instagram to have different types of, especially now in this pandemic, to have different avenues of like showcasing what can be funny. So I like doing the drawings.
Yeah.
I got other stupid videos on there on my other account, just to keep it interesting.
I was about to say that clouds don't have COVID, but I think they do. Like, I think it's microscopic particles can sometimes just hang there in the fucking air. It's airborne. So these clouds now, they may be COVID clouds, but they're pretty, aren't they?
Don't blame it on the clouds. That's really not fair.
Dude, come on. That Instagram account has thousands of followers, motherfucker. Don't blame the clouds. This is my ticket, bitch. I love that shit. Well, Elon,
I'm gonna lose all my followers if people think that they caused COVID.
Elon Altman, what other comedy are you doing on this Alonstagram?
Well, I've been doing these videos when the pandemic started.
Larry the COVID guy?
Yeah, so I started doing Larry the COVID guy, which is Larry the Cable Guy, but he is talking about COVID-related stuff, and his catchphrase is "Get her tested."
Yes, I love it. You're doing more good than Larry the Cable Guy, because I bet you he has not been pro-mask the entire time. I wouldn't think that wouldn't be on brand for him.
No, he hasn't been. He's been a real mask skeptic on his Twitter. He's one of those guys who will post a thing that's anti-mask and then just say, well, just saying, just putting it out there.
You get more germs putting on the mask, just saying.
It's hard to breathe.
I'm a big guy. Pulling a mad, and I fucking love that shit. Dude, Larry the COVID guy, I mean, do you think that he should have his own Instagram account and that would outshine the clouds, or no?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe he should be a spinoff.
Dude, you're doing nothing but spinoffs. I love this. And when you're doing kind of spinoff, you know that you're doing something correctly. You've tapped into the fucking zeitgeist. There's people on Instagram who just love you. Are you bringing on TikTok too? I would think that your Larry the COVID guy could be huge on TikTok, which seems to lean liberal, I think.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, I have been posting it on TikTok, and they are not popular. I think people see like the woods and the camouflage hat, and they don't even want to. The algorithm just says this is not for people.
But I would think that maybe do better on. I mean, I guess you would fool the censors on. You'd fool the AI on Parler or something like that, but they would hate the message. Parler is that right-leaning thing, and they're saying that like all these right-leaning, comics and commentators and things like that, they're all on Parler. But what they're saying is it's not fun because they're all on the alt-right. Like, there's nobody to troll. So if you got on there and put this shit on there, dude, like they're paying they want to pay people like Christy Teigen to even come to Parler because they have nobody to fuck with.
Yeah.
So I think they've literally made offers to some of these people on the left. It's like, if you bring 50,000 followers to Parler, we will pay you this much money, because it's so difficult to find people who are ready to be fucking flamed. And I think Larry the COVID guy might be one of them.
He could be popular there. Kind of like the Colbert character in a way, you know,
Yeah.
where some people don't know if it's making fun of them or not.
Yeah.
Like my wife her father's side of the family is from Kentucky.
Okay.
And so I always think, like, whenever I post one of those videos that, like, her aunts get a little bit wacky on Facebook with like some weird political stuff.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, from Kentucky. and yet they like the videos. They share the videos. I'm not really sure if they get that I'm like kind of making fun of it, or if it's just they just enjoy it. Like, it's just they're funny and I sound like them.
Yeah, and some of them are not anti. I think some of them are kind of relieved at the fact that the whole, the guy they've been defending for years has finally put a mask on. So now it kind of is like, dude, all right, I don't, the mask thing is acceptable. I don't give a shit that much. Stop fucking with me about this mask thing. Let's put the issue to rest. Everybody put a mask on if you're inside or whatever. So it's nice though that they're sharing. Like, yeah, even if they don't understand this spoof, they care about their in-law enough to share it.
Yeah, so I enjoy that.
Dude, I love it. Well, just creating spin-offs left and right. But what we're going to talk about real quick today is I think a mutual interest, a mutual love, but maybe not. Like, I have the comic supply topics and I picked from a couple, and I saw Seinfeld and I was like, dude, does he like Seinfeld enough? Like to match me like for like on this thing? And I come on and your backdrop on Zoom is Seinfeld's apartment, and I love it. So please tell me you're a fan and you're not just fucking hating. You're not.
Yeah, I love Seinfeld. I've been watching it since I was a little kid.
Yes.
It was like a really like I was like 5 or 6 years old. I remember watching like some early season episode, and I didn't know anything they were talking about. It was when Jerry and Elaine were like, "Should we still have sex and be friends?" I never even knew what that meant, but I was still like, this guy kind of looks like what I'm gonna look like when I grow up.
We can only hope. He's aged pretty well.
Yeah, he looks pretty good for 87.
I mean, you're doing well. You got a good hairline and shit, so I think you could, it's in the cards for you. So good job. Like, good genes. That good genes. I think you're gonna water it down with those Kentucky genes, but I think you're gonna be a pretty good looking grandpa or something like that.
Yeah.
So real quick, I gotta know favorite episodes of all time. I'm putting you on the spot. Which are the ones that tickled your fancy? Is it the earlier Larry David episodes where he was integrally involved and, was very ranty and George was very upset all the time? Or was it some of the later stuff where the absurdist stuff, found the right writers and you found, Newman, wanting to eat Kramer because he looked like a turkey because he.
That's exactly what I thought of when you said absurdist.
So which brand do you prefer though?
I like the Larry David seasons.
Okay.
Obviously not like season 1. That's like just it didn't really have its voice yet.
Yeah.
But those middle seasons, those really great ones, like and the season long arcs, like when they were writing the pilot and getting the show on NBC.
Russell Dalrymple and Denise Richards. You peeked and I poked.
Yeah. It's like staring at the sun.
And that's kind of true. Like I'm not really a big tit guy. Like I like really thin people who are, relatively flat chested because I'm fat. So like to me, tits look like fat. And so I'm not really like, I like ass, I guess, but I don't like fat that much. And so, but one thing is like, if somebody peeked, I would poke. And when it comes to cleavage, it's like, I don't really like tits, but I mean, below a certain size, I'll poke. I'll peek at the poke.
Look. You can't not look. It's a forbidden thing. And then it shows up all of a sudden. You have to peek.
Yeah. Dude, I love it. I mean, have you ever run into a situation like that where, I mean, there was, you were inappropriately caught by something like that? I mean, I always say that, I unfortunately, like when the girl's pretty far along, like I do look at some ass on the street, and I always say that I'll probably die crossing the street looking at ass. Like, have you ever been caught with anything like that? I know you're happily married right now.
Well, yeah, what happens is like you'll be looking, and then if that person notices, then you have to like look away at something else that's very uninteresting and look at that.
Behind me, hundreds of feet away. I was like, I was looking at the car. Yeah, that was a nice car.
I'm just a person who observes everything, and that was just one of the things, but it had no special significance.
And Elon Altman's like, I'm a stand-up. That's what I do. I notice things.
I'm observational.
So did that kind of, we're going to talk about Seinfeld a lot more, but I guess I'm putting 2 and 2 together. Did that kind of influence your decision to become a stand-up? And did you become observational? And if so, was it because of that?
Yeah, I think Seinfeld was a big influence.
Of
Just
becoming a comic.
yeah, because you watch the episodes and there he is doing it from the
Yeah.
beginning of the episode at the end of the episode, and it seemed like a pretty cool life and everything.
And at the very
Um,
least, it taught you early on that this was a profession. Like I had Art Kai on, he was like, dude, I was raised in Oklahoma or some shit. Like I didn't even know it was a profession until this course in college. And so you knew pretty young that this was a profession that could be pursued by somebody in New York.
yeah, I just certain heroes of mine. I loved comedy, and stand up was just what they were doing. People like Dave Chappelle and Norm Macdonald, Mitch Hedberg was a big influence on me.
Yeah, and I guess I'll give you my hot take because I go back and I watch the comedians in cars episodes over and over again. And one of the ones I love is the Norm Macdonald one. It's one of my favorite episodes. I love Jerry and also Alec Baldwin, who's amazing. Him and Kate McKinnon, like Steve Harvey. Some of these things I watch over and over again because I like the place, I like the guests. Seinfeld's good at talking and stuff. He just seems like a joy to be around. And I also like Comedian, that documentary about him and Orny Adams and things like that. But I almost think that, and of course the show is amazing. Do you agree with my hot take that Jerry Seinfeld is the George Carlin of comedy product, but not the George Carlin of stand-up comedy? Meaning, if George Carlin is the end-all be-all, and I totally disagree with that. Me and Dustin Chafin talked about it. But like, is it possible to love somebody's comedy product and slightly dislike some of their stand-up?
Yes, I think that I
Oh,
agree with that. I mean, I love Seinfeld, the TV show. I think his stand-up is, structurally it's perfect and all of that, but like it doesn't make me fall out of my seat laughing like other comics do.
yeah, like, and also because it's all above the ears. It's all kind of in the head. Observational is very, very thoughty, and I tend to get a little bit more hyped up when it comes to somebody who's showing a little bit of emotion, like a Bill Burr or somebody like a Kevin Hart who has a lot of act outs. Because it's energy, it's taking me to emotion and energy. Whereas it's like, all right, yeah, that's cool. That was a nice new way of thinking of things, Jerry. But you're not really transporting me. There's no escape there. It's like after this, oh cool, yeah, of course I'm gonna look at that thing that you dove deep on and I'm gonna look at it in your way. Thank you for that. That's cool. But it's a little thing, like baking your head into a block of cheese. It's the whole where else can you put cheese on the pizza? Pretty soon they're gonna be putting our head in a block of cheese, which is cool. But I guess the problem with it is he's so honest about how hard stand-up is. Like during comedian, he's like, oh, it's so hard to get comfortable and stuff like that. Whereas other people come along like Bill Burr and Kevin Hart, they put out 4 or 5 Netflix specials. It looks effortless, even though it's not. And I like them better. And so he's really looked like, he's gnashing his teeth trying to get this act together. I'm like, and it's still not half as good as some of these specials that are out there.
Yeah, it's I guess he's kind of a perfectionist with it, whereas maybe someone like Bill Burr doesn't have to be, because it's
Yeah.
more of the character that like anything he says seems funny because of the way he's delivering it, and just because you really get his persona so much. And with
Yeah,
Seinfeld,
but
it's not so much persona; it's really just the thought.
and that's so funny too, because he could be the other way. Because like he said, he's like, you can be famous to where people talk about you, or you can be famous where people start to talk like you. I'm so famous that people want to talk like me, and that's so true. Like, oh, am I being funny right now? He's like, yeah, is this a bit? Like he really could go out there like Bill Burr and talked about deeper things, and it would be interesting because it's just the way he talks. But having said all that, of course he's a great comic, and I just love him for his comedy product, in part because he's talking about how hard stand-up comedy is. But because of that, because I kind of downplay his stand-up, his recent special was surprisingly good. Did you take that down?
I didn't
Did
watch the new special. Another side project that I do is with this another comedian, Rob Ryan. He and I do these videos called Comedians Guessing Punchlines. And what we do is we watch a new special that we haven't seen yet. We have another comedian watch it ahead of time and timestamp for us when we should pause right before certain punchlines. And we try to guess where the comedian's going to go with it and see if we can get the punchline right.
That's
And
amazing. And what's your
a lot of
batting
times with this
average
new
on guessing
special,
it?
we just haven't watched it because we don't want to ruin it. We have to
Yes.
make sure that we're totally pure if we're going to use it for one of those episodes.
Yeah, I want to go in pure. You're like Costanza. You're like Frank Costanza. Don't tell me about the channel. I'm gonna go in pure, whatever it was. Firestorm. Yeah. So what's your batting average on guessing the punchline correctly?
We're pretty good at it.
Yeah.
It really depends. Some people, it's actually surprisingly easy. If you take enough time, you can figure out where it's going to go. Like we did Anthony Jeselnik,
Okay.
and we might have gotten 50% of them right.
Okay. There's gonna be a dead baby at the end, something like that.
Yeah, so you just know, okay, it's going to go as dark as possible. What darkness is it going to go to? And we spend anywhere from like 2 to 5 minutes discussing where we think it might go before we get to like our final guesses. And
That is
so
cool.
some people might say like, oh, you're guessing his punchlines. Is this like are you saying that he's not a good comic because they're predictable? And we say no. Like it took us so long to figure out where he's going to go. If you're watching this in a comedy club or on TV, your mind doesn't work that fast. So that's still the surprise factor that makes you laugh.
That's cool. But you can also say it could have gone here and it would have been more interesting had he gone here. Like you guys are exploring all these avenues, some of which might be more interesting than how it actually went. So I'd be interested not only to hear if the prediction was correct, but also what alternate predictions would have been better.
Yeah. Like, and we include that in our little videos, like, well, our bad guesses, our wrong guesses, not bad, but like the ones that maybe would have been better than where a comic went. Sometimes the comic goes like very predictable and we're like, wow, we really thought they would do more here.
Yeah, we nailed that in about 5 seconds. So yeah, without throwing anybody under the bus that isn't already been canceled, is there any comedians that have been really fucking predictable?
I'm trying to think. One that we had trouble guessing was Wanda Sykes, and we kind of always knew the ballpark of where she was going to go with her punchlines.
Okay.
But what made it great was that she would kind of go there, but then like add some flair to it that was just like that, like showed like why she's a great comic.
Oh,
so like we could say like, oh, she's going to say something about, leaving a baby in a car.
Yeah.
But she would say it in her own way and the word choice, everything about it, like just made it better when she did it.
Good. And it's even like Kevin Hart, like, I put him on my Mount Rushmore, but one of, you go back to some of these specials and you're like, is this story that funny? It's like, oh, it's because he's acting out. It's because he's doing the voices. And so my question is like, Elon Altman on stage doing stand-up, did you go observational or kind of what direction did you take with your comedy after you grew up with Seinfeld?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I started, it was a little bit more observational, absurdist kind of. I was influenced by Mitch Hedberg sort of stuff, so it wasn't like one-liners, but there was a lot of just sort of fantastical thought.
Yeah, and how'd that work? How'd that work out?
It was okay, but I just kind of I've evolved from that, I guess. Now it's more like personal, observational, but like structured jokes. And so I'm not like a long storyteller. I like to have my bits be 30 seconds to a minute.
Okay.
For the most part.
And when I had Mike Kaplan on it, he said that his autobiographical stuff is becoming more relatable. Once you start getting married and stuff like that. Have you found out that over time, your autobiographical stuff is getting more relatable because you got married or whatever?
Yeah, I think having that common ground helps for sure. A lot of the stuff I talk about also is things about like I'm short, so it'd be like stuff about being short. Things about like myself, but I think other people can relate to that, or if not, they can at least laugh at me. Because I'm pointing out personal flaws, and then they're like, yes, that's what I was thinking when I saw you, but I couldn't put it so well as you just did.
Yeah.
So they like to laugh at me for that, and I'll take that. I'll take any kind of laugh.
Yeah, if you're laughing with me or laughing at me, you're still laughing.
Yeah, I'm still chalking that up as a win.
and I mean, how come you became a stand-up comic instead of something like working at Plano Sports or working at the Yankees? Like you could have went in the George direction or the Elaine direction and worked for Jay Peterman.
I totally wanted to work for a sports team. Like in college, I interned for the Nets for like a summer, and that was really cool.
Was that during the KG years and all that, Paul Pierce, that debacle?
It was during the years when they went to the finals, actually. So it was pre that. It was like the Vince Carter, Kenyon Martin, Jason Kidd Nets.
Was Deron Williams was after that?
Yeah, he was somewhere in the dark period. There were so many. I'm a Knicks fan, and like all these years blend together. There's been 20 years of terrible teams, and sometimes I forget like that certain stars were ever there. But yeah, like for the Nets, like Darren Williams being there, like that happened, and it was kind of crappy.
You look back and you're like, that happened. And so you're talking about stuff, like you weren't able to go, like you looked up Jay Peterman and you were like, dude, this is not actually a real catalog. I can't work there. I did the sports team thing. I didn't get to work with Steinbrenner and get his pastrami sandwich or whatever, or the pita pocket. The pita pocket prevents the drip. Yeah, the calzone. And so you're like, I got to do the stand-up comedy thing. And did you start pretty young? I mean, Did you start at some of the were some of the places around that he started at? He's always talking about Catch a Rising Star, and I imagine that's closed.
Yeah, that wasn't around. I mean, now it exists. I think the brand name exists in some clubs. Like there's one in New Jersey, but I think it's a conference room that has comedy once a week.
You're like,
But
I'm
they have
not.
they've franchised the brand, but the actual Catch a Rising Star, like you'd see in like Seinfeld, that hasn't existed for a while
Okay.
since before I started. I
And
started when I was 19.
Wow.
So I was still in college. I looked so young. I looked probably like I was 13 at the time. And so I think I had like that. People were like, "Wow, he's funny enough and looks so young that this is also kind of weird." So it made it even funnier because it was like, how is this prodigy thinking of these things? But I wasn't as young as they thought.
And do you think there's any prodigy there? I mean, and are those rhythms kind of beat in there because you watched a lot of Seinfeld? Like, do you think that in watching a lot of sitcoms, you can become better at joke writing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm obsessed with The Simpsons,
Oh.
more so than Seinfeld even. And rewatching and watching over and over and over, and like quoting episodes to my friends, like which is all we did in high school. It just teaches you actually how to structure a perfect joke, how to use misdirection. As much as watching stand-up specials can teach you that, I think just understanding why things are funny.
Now, I like that you're doing credible misdirection now. It's rooted in truth. Like some of that stuff is so absurd that you don't believe it. And it's hard to kind of transition from a joke, with some absurd premise where you're the guy walking down the street and you see a duck, and then the next joke you're walking down the street and you see a hot air balloon. At some point, people are like, I don't believe this stuff. Like this is not actually rooted in any truth. So the more you become personal, you can still put misdirection in there because people don't know the full extent of the truth. And so, like, do you think credible misdirection is kind of a better way to go? Like some of this Nikki Glaser stuff, I'm like, I don't believe a word you just fucking said.
She's not having that much sex.
yeah, please. Yeah, like you just had sex with it, oh yeah. So, and sometimes it's in a tag, oh yeah, so this homeless guy, and then I fucked him. It's like, no, you didn't. 3 jokes previous were about how you're in a serious relationship. It's just like, she recently came out with a special that was better. But she's not Eliza yet. Somebody like Eliza Schlesinger can put in 4 specials and just come off as credible for a lot of them. The recent one was dog shit, but she's on my Mount Rushmore for the 3 or 4 before that.
Yeah, I agree though. That I think credible misdirection is important because there's always some people in the audience. What you want to do is like never make the audience think ever. And so sometimes that has to do with like the word choice that you use. If you use a word that like maybe they're not fully aware of, or they have to just think for a split second, like, oh yeah, that's that word, that means whatever. Then they're taking themselves out of the joke for a second, and that's a bad thing.
And so if there's anything incredible on there,
direction,
yeah,
you have to have it be a story that like they're not going to say in their mind, like, wait a second, he just said he was married, and now there's this thing.
By then it's too late. They're not going to laugh if
people. It's like this internet. Everyone wants to have like a gotcha moment. They want to be able to say that's not true, or he's lying.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, now a lot of the jokes that I do are somehow believable enough that people actually, they'll come up to me afterwards and ask like, oh, is that true? Is your wife like this? Whatever. And I have to be like, well, I'm exaggerating for the joke.
Yeah. She is a little bit like this. But I like that it's rooted in truth. But I like how you're saying, yeah, if they're using their brain, they're probably not going to be using their laughter muscle or whatever the fucking that muscle is, Like you have to kind of dumb it down. And the minute they're thinking a split second, that's a minute that they're not spent laughing.
Yeah, and I think like there used to be a joke that this comic that I'm not going to name him because I'm talking about one of his jokes here. But he's one of my favorite comics, and he has a joke where he uses the word audit, but not in the way that most people would think of the word audit. You think of audit, you think of like taxes or something, but he was using it in the way of like a college student like listening on a class they're not actually taking.
Yeah.
And so he used that word there, and I always thought whenever I would hear that joke, like that's an odd choice of a word there because like you have these audiences in the comedy clubs in the city that are foreign tourists, whatever it is, they're not like, maybe they don't know that use of the word. And I think it just takes them a couple seconds to figure out what the context of the joke is. And I think it takes them
and you're like, this guy's a stud. How come he hasn't thought of that yet? But we follow you, and your jokes are going to be credible misdirection. And Alon, You So Crazy is Twitter, and Alonstagram is you on Instagram. But your other one, Cartoons on Clouds, taking off like a rocket ship. And the other one was a comedian's guessing punchlines. Is that on YouTube?
Yes, you can see those on my Instagram. We have clips of them.
Good.
And or you can look at Rob Ryan Rocks on Instagram. He has more videos of it there, and on his YouTube.
Dude, yeah, you got spinoffs like crazy, man.
Yeah, another one that we didn't talk about is at the beginning of the quarantine, I started doing these. I would do a joke about the pandemic off my balcony here in the city to nobody. And so those are called uh, NYC quarantine I don't even know what they're called anymore. Quarantine balcony stand up, something like that. I did like
Yeah.
18 of those or 20 of those.
Yeah. I see that
So
now.
a lot of content that it will never be useful once the world starts up again.
Dude, well, I mean, you're creating spinoffs, and during the quarantine, that could have been a spinoff for this particular season. But Larry the COVID guy is another one. Spinoffs like crazy, like a great sitcom. Elon Altman, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Brian. It was really fun. Thanks for having me.